Well, Shereel, it is so lovely to have you a part of this series. Thank you, my friend, for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's been a while since I've seen your beautiful face and I get to see it like this.
That's so
That's
awesome.
awesome.
That's great. Well, we've got a long history of those days when we lived back in California, and
Yeah.
probably it was in the 90s when we first became friends, and
Uh-huh.
yeah, exciting. So, Shereel, I'd love for you to share about who you are, the work that you're doing now as it relates to dance and artistry, but also ministry. So if
Mhm.
just take it away.
All right. Thank you again so much, Cynthia, for having me. I have been dancing and performing totally for about almost 39 years now. And so my formal training is in modern dance. I received my undergraduate degrees over at San Francisco State in choreography and performance. And so shortly after that, I continued to dance locally and continued to teach. And I had aspirations of one day starting my own company, which I did, Ixalt, in 2003. We started Ixalt, and that particular, we were really dedicated to sharing our love of God through the arts. And being that we're in the Bay Area, we wanted it to be different, different than we didn't really want to call ourselves a praise dance or praise type thing. We really wanted to take the skill and the excellence of being an artist into this space. However, back up a little bit, in my dance training also encompassed dances of different traditions, from Central African traditions, from West African traditions, Afro-Caribbean traditions, and now hula, the dances of Hawaii. So it's a very wide pedigree of different styles, but yet the mission in my life is to be a positive change agent in the lives of people through my talents and to show God in what I do in my life first, and then how that transforms into my art. I mean, I think your life, definitely your art is a reflection of how you, hopefully it's a reflection of how you live. So that's what my ministry, my life ministry is, and that's what we did with Ixalt. One of the things that was really unique about Ixalt was that we really were big on diversity in terms of diversity of arts, diversity of genre, and then also diversity of people. So it wasn't something that we necessarily did a big marketing campaign on, but that's just what we drew because that's what we wanted to do. And so our musicians, our dancers were people who were Latino, Asian, African American, Caucasian. We really wanted to reflect the true mission of God, and that is that every tribe, every tongue, and every nation be represented, as well as different artistic talents. I think now our organization has come a little bit more full circle in that now we're bringing in the healing arts. Now we're bringing in, and that would include health, that would include herbalism, that would include things to really help us realize our full potential as human beings on this planet. So that was our starting place, but now it's becoming more full circle to include the whole art spectrum, both performance and healing arts and, those types of things. So that, again, that's a tool that we can use to infuse the influence of God and to touch the lives of people, to be in these inconspicuous places that most Christians probably wouldn't be comfortable in, but that's the call. So that's just a quick breath. In addition to my work as a dancer, I am a martial artist and I'm also an herbalist. And so those two things definitely tie into my overall dancecape as a performer and as a teacher and working with kids and, using plant medicine as a way to help drive health as well. So it's now a big wide circle of stuff. Version.
Well, Shereel, it's wonderful to have you a part of this Learn to Listen series. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is such a blessing. It's so good to see your beautiful face and those beautiful crosses in the back. They're just incredible to look at. Oh my gosh, technology is ridiculous. We can see each other from a distance on a computer, on a phone.
I
Wow.
love it. I love it. Well, I reflect back on those days when we were able to see each other so much in person and
I
rehearsal process,
know.
dancing back in the 90s when we lived out in California. So I've just appreciated these years of our friendship and
Me
relationship. So
too.
I'm not going to do your intro. I'll just let people listen from you as you share about your dance artistry as an educator, as a minister, as a choreographer. I mean, you just have a plethora of titles that you've been able to wear and continue to wear so gracefully. So I'm just going to let you take it away and just give us an introduction about who you are, Shereel.
Awesome. Okay. Well, my name is Shereel Washington, and I am a dancer. I'm a teacher. I'm a martial artist, and I'm a herbalist. And I'm also a student of hula. My dance background spans about 39 years. I started dancing when I was 9, and I've always had a love for it. And I started to pursue it seriously in college. And actually, going back to high school, actually, I graduated from Performing Arts High School. And so I knew that then that would be the path. But, you know, when you're in college, you're trying to make your parents happy or whatnot and do what they want you to do. And the next thing you know, you finally decide, okay, this is what I want to do. And so I got my undergraduate degree over at San Francisco State. I started my undergraduate studies, though, at UC Santa Barbara in dance. And I completed my undergraduate studies in San Francisco State. And then right from there, I started dancing professionally here in the Bay Area. And I started dancing with different companies, from traditional African dance companies to modern dance companies. And I also began to produce my own work as an independent choreographer here in the Bay. And I started teaching as well. Coupled with that, I continued my study of traditional dance forms like Central African dance, West African dance, Afro-Caribbean, and also, again, hula dances of Hawaii. So my dance background is very wide. I would say I've taken on more traditional styles of dance because that's where I feel that there's such a call of reconciliation there in those places to redeem and to reclaim and to reconcile some of the experiences that traditional cultures have had with those claiming to be Christians. And I'm just going to say it like that, you know, because there's been some good people who've gone on to represent the gospel very well, but it's always kind of like the ones who mishandle it get more notoriety than others. And so my goal is to how can I, in my role or my place there, how can I use that to maybe bring correction and bring truth to where God is in these cultures, whereas God is in their dance practices. So that's taken on a ministry in and of itself. But during that time also, my husband and I, we were the founders of Ixalt. And that organization was dedicated to sharing the arts and sharing the gospel through dance, music, song, and spoken word. And, you know, we were really, really big on, again, cultural diversity and artistic diversity as well. And so we represented from poetry to multidisciplinary theater pieces, to dance, to different types of dance. And also our company members, our members reflected that as well, performing in different secular audiences as well as the church, and to just be where people are, you know, to be where we can be most effective. It's funny being here in the Bay Area. Are the people who seem to love us the most were the ones who were non-churched. You know, it was, you know, unfortunately, there's still much to do in the church in terms of teaching about dance and different types of artistic expressions. But it was just in the secular place, they really loved the messages. I mean, we were in places like Cal Berkeley, and we were right in the heart of San Francisco. And, you know, our yearly open air concerts, Enchanted Afternoons, usually fell on the heels of the Gay Pride Parade. And people would come that weekend to get ready for that event, but they would also come to our event. And so we had folks from the LGBT community come, and they would hear us talk about God and talk about the things of God, and they really enjoyed the presentation just as it was. So it was just really amazing how God used us to be in those places and to even try to set some sort of standard about we can still be openly committed to our faith, but we have to be where people are. And I think what was different about us that we didn't just go to church or Christian events. We really took it to where there's the need and the people are. So that's I'm trying to think, is there anything else to say? In addition to that, I am also a martial artist, as I may have mentioned that earlier, and I'm also an herbalist. And so with the martial arts, my training has studied in White Crane Silat Kung Fu, and in Shaolin Kung Fu, and in Qigong. And also I am a certified herbalist in plant medicine making. So yeah, that's
gorgeous. So gorgeous. Well, I should tell everybody to sit back because it's going to be like a 3-hour talk. We got a lot.
Right.
So with that non-traditional approach in the context of, what we think of as just, you're a modern contemporary dancer and you don't necessarily practice all these other styles, or you're a dancer and, why would you become an herbalist also? Or, you know what I mean? It's just all these different, beautiful, I believe, demonstrations of God. You need to listen. You need to listen to what God has been saying to you. And so I just would love for you to share about that aspect, because that's a part of this, just for us to learn to listen to the voice of God and developing that discipline. So can you share about your own practice in that way?
Well, the way that I really hear or listen to God the most is in my prayer time. So having really a constant conversation with God about my life. As I say to some people, God spends a lot of time talking to me about me. And so in that, how can I then be engaging with God about myself and the things that I want, that I need to address, things that I and desiring in my marriage, just being real and transparent with God about my day to day. So that's at different times of the day. Sometimes it's best in the mornings. Sometimes it's when I'm driving. Sometimes it's when I'm on my way to do someplace, but just constantly engaging in conversation with God. I know sometimes it's good to have that set time, but to be like you are with your spouse, you talk to your spouse all the time. So we hopefully are the same way with God. How can we engage with God all the time? It doesn't have to be anything long or drawn out, but it's just now it's like, God, I'm thinking about this thing right now, or just really allowing God in on your thought process. I'm thinking about this, or what do you think about that? Oh God, I'm feeling like this, just talking to God on the real, and so that's my practice, to talk to God about everything, and to be prepared to listen too. It's one thing to talk, but you also have to be quiet, so quieting yourself down. This is where breathing and mindfulness, those things come in to help still yourself in such a way that you can hear. Because sometimes we will talk so much that we don't give God a chance to answer, and we don't listen, so sometimes that can be a practice in of itself. It's just learning how to be quiet and just listen and get someplace where you just not talk. And sometimes I've done that too. I'm in my car and I just, I'm just going to breathe. I'm just going to sit here and take some deep breaths. And then sometimes I've heard God reveal some amazing things to me, but it's just cultivating a practice of really deepening your relationship and your intimacy with God on a daily, day-to-day basis.
That's
nothing scientific.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that that science would agree, in particular, that part of mindful practice, some of the pop psychology terminology of understanding that we love, and in our faith, meditation and prayer and contemplation, and all of those are reflective of that. So I think science has proven that there is something that happens in that, but we know that God's already proved it beforehand.
Yeah, beforehand.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Yeah.
So I'd love to go in a little bit deeper there with you. So how do you know it's the voice of God? How do you know that that's what, he's coming in agreement with, or you're coming in agreement with, and it's not just some good idea? Because, I work with collegiate age students, and a part of the continued development is trying to help them to understand listening. And sometimes we're conditioned in a Christian environment that, these are the absolute ways that we navigate in our faith journey. And then discernment, because there's so many voices, there's so much, can be so much confusion. So how for you, do you feel or know, or it's well with your soul that it's like, that's God and I'm listening?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think more conversation needs to be had around this, and how do we know? And of course, I can always go to the scripture where Jesus says, my sheep, they hear my voice, they know my voice. But then what does that mean? So for me, when I know it's God, it's usually a thought, an idea, or words that I normally don't even use. It's a construct that I don't even think in. It's something that's completely outside of my normal way of behaving, or my way of perceiving things. I'll give you an example, and I won't go too much because I don't want to, get off really what we're talking about. But there was one particular situation where I was praying about this individual, and I asked the Lord, I said, Lord, who is this person that I'm dealing with? And so this word that came to me was obfuscate. Now, I don't use that term. I don't talk like that, okay? Now, you know me, I don't talk like that at all. So I asked my husband, I said, what does obfuscate mean? So he told me it means simply to hide. I'm like, wow, that's a real word? I was like, I wasn't sure if I was making it out right, and I looked it up. I'm like, wow, God actually spoke that word to me in revelation of someone else. And so it's stuff like that. It's like ideas, even words and phrases and thought processes that's not, I know it's not me. And so that's the clearest way that I know God is speaking to me. It's generally something completely outside of myself, outside of my range of function. That's not, I can't, there's no way to attribute it to myself. Sometimes it's an instant knowing that happens. Like sometimes, like in me and my husband's conversations, when I'm telling him something, and I'll say, well, God said this. And at that moment, there's a sureness, there's a certainty that, and I would say, I don't even know how I know this right now, because when you may have asked me that sooner, I didn't know. But right now I know, and I know it's God. It's just a deep, not just a knowing, but it's a deep, like, yes, I know this is the God talking. And I can't quite describe that portion, but it's a settled, concrete, yes, this is God telling me to tell you this, or this is God giving me this information. And I don't even know how I know I'm correct, but I know I'm right. I know what I'm saying is true. And I don't have the empirical evidence right now to prove it, but I know that I'm right. And then, of course, when I say it, and sometimes that's when we say it and speak that word, then it's like, it plays itself out. And it's like, okay, now God, through that, shows and proves that what he's told you was from him. So it's interesting how when we get revelations from God, or when God speaks to us, we have to then activate our faith and know that, okay, God, I know this is you speaking. So now I need to now either speak that, or I need to do that. And then that's how it's seen. Does that make sense?
Totally. That's
okay.
just gorgeous. Well,
okay.
it's again, his ways are higher, his thoughts are
Yeah.
higher. And so when we can really not put that in some lofty idea that God is like,
I know.
up there.
Up
It's like
there.
he brings that down to us. His ways are
Yeah.
higher, And so he's going to reveal them to us. He's going to
Yeah.
invite us into that highness, into that high place.
Yes, I love that
Ground.
word. Invite us into that highness. I love
Yeah.
that.
So yeah, and there's a gorgeous example. I appreciate that. And that's that a way again of God for us to do those things in faith that are outside of us. Then it just allows him to move all the more to be able to be God. So yeah, gorgeous examples. Thank you for expounding on that.
Awesome. You're welcome. You're welcome.
I appreciate that. And then because I've known you in a leadership role for so long and the different opportunities that God provides for you, I'd love for you to speak about just what you have cultivated yourself as a leader, and what do you feel like are important attributes or characteristics to define an effective leader? Because sometimes I'll have those ideas that these are good leadership qualities, and praise God, I have a few of them, and I'm still working at the others. So just would love to hear, for you to speak on that topic.
Sure. I think one of the things that I do definitely get this example from my husband, he likes to use the term head waiter. And that really, I think unfortunately, it may go back. Sometimes we put so much on that title, and that we forget that we're dealing with people. People are people, and that we're not perfect. And even people who are under a leader has to remember their own humanity and try to be compassionate in that way and recognize that, like you, they are broken vessels too. That's number one. And so number two is being okay with saying, I don't know, being real about, where your range of knowledge ends and where it begins, and keeping your own humanity in mind, and just also not taking yourself so serious. Not taking yourself so serious. Sometimes we can put the weight on ourselves. But if we just, in our sharing and trying to impact people in this leadership role, that we can invite them into our journey too. We can reveal, I'm in this struggle or fight or battle with you. It's like when I work with kids, one of the things I like to do is like, the things I tell them, the things that I'm sharing with you, I got to do it too as a big person. It's no different for me. I'm just a big version of you, and I am. I'm a big version of these children, and so, when I ask them to listen or talk to them the value of focusing, I'm like, you know what? I have to do that too. I have days when I let my emotions get the best of me, like last night. I have my moments where I just like lose myself in my own feelings, but I have to work through them, and I have to not let them control me. So I tell them that I too am on that journey with you. So it gives people a sense that, wow, they're not trying to put on false pretenses and pretend that they're just some lofty person sitting up in a cloud. No. I'm right here with you. And so that's why I like the term head waiter, because I'm the head servant, if you will, except God has told me to do this for you all, or to try to be an example. I keep thinking of the story of Joshua, where God told Joshua, hey, my servant Moses is dead. It's your turn, man. I'm paraphrasing, right? So he does it. He tells him, look, don't be discouraged. Don't worry about it. Don't look to the right or don't look to the left. Just trust me. Knowing all the fears and concerns that Joshua had, even the mistakes that Joshua made, God still used him to do great things. And so I think as leaders, we have to remember that we're just like the people we're called to serve. We're not so above them in that way. They're just like us. And so in our journey in serving, we can invite them to come along with us and understand that, hey, I'm like you, I'm learning and growing too. And what I don't know, I'm going to tell you I don't know. And we'll find out together. Or you know what, I made this mistake and I'm sorry. Those are words that a lot of leaders don't like to say, is I'm sorry and I don't know.
That's
So
huge.
yeah, that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is huge. And I appreciate that. Just modeling that, and also just being reminded of it, because sometimes feel like we've got to have it all together. We've got to have
Mhm.
all the answers. And then that's what has constituted us to be put into that place, to
Yeah,
be
it
put
does.
entrusted with, that responsibility.
Mhm.
And yes, often the
Mhm.
leaders will know more and have more
Mhm.
experience, have more knowledge, and have that. And yet, if we're not identifiable, if we are not relatable, if we're not, imparting humility in our
Mhm.
opportunities and situations, then we are, definitely just falling short
Yeah,
the opportunities to teach. And those are the teaching moments, right?
those
Sometimes
are the
those are
teaching moments.
greatest
Mhm.
teaching moments when I've heard another leader say, I'm sorry, or I've heard another leader say, well, let's dig in and figure this out together. That
Mhm.
that gives it even a sense of empowerment
Mhm.
as well.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
yeah, those are beautiful reminders.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. That's
Yeah, no
beautiful.
worries. It's that's how I try to do it.
Yeah, great. Well, you do it well. And the part I love, because I know there's so much about you, in this journey is, being reminded to not take yourself so seriously. And
Mhm.
your just laugh rings in my ears sometimes. I love your jovial laugh that just is so filled with just passion and authenticity. And it just, oh, so that's
Yeah,
beautiful,
I do
beautiful.
that a lot when I'm
I know
teaching.
you do. I know you
I
do.
have to laugh. It's like, I mean, what else can I do?
So that's good. That's good. And
Awesome.
I think
Awesome.
it's, that says that let love covers a multitude of sins. I think laughter should be in there somewhere.
Yeah, laughter. Yeah,
Covers a lot.
so you just gotta laugh at yourself, and you like, okay, all right. Let me just take it down 1,000 and be cool. It's all right.
Yeah. Well, being in the Bay Area and having so much diversity, which is ethnicity and just different expressions and cultural practices and art-filled expression. I mean, there's just a lot there.
Hmm.
And I know you've traveled some as well and been a believer for a long time. What do you feel like God's doing in the arts today and in the world related to dance, or just in general, just this understanding of, where are we? What's kind of the climate, and where do you believe we're going?
Okay. Well, we in terms of the body of Christ, or just in general?
Well, I think both, because
Okay.
when we talk about where societal norms are is one
Oh,
aspect, and then
okay.
also where are we as believer artists to either come along that or to enlighten that, or just I just would
Sure.
love to hear your
Of
perspective.
course. Okay. Well, certainly in terms of arts as an industry, I have to say, unfortunately, um, the arts is become a platform for a lot of political rhetoric, and also pushing ideologies and agendas that we wouldn't even be talking about 20 years ago. So the arts have become a space to also manage the ideas, or to place ideas in the heads of people. Um, so whether it's on the big screen, whether it's on the television, whether it's even in the theater, which, by the way, I was meeting with a friend who I served on his board for. He's the executive director of one of the larger arts organizations here in the Bay. He was saying that there's just now an entire group of artists who don't know how to produce works in the theater anymore. They're not producing work for the proscenium stages, because now, they're renting spaces to do different video projections, and a lot of it is politically charged. And so the arts has become a space to do that. So the groups who are just trying to do work that speak of, day-to-day things, that's not really what's being sought after here in the Bay. And I just want to be specific, here in the Bay. And funders and grant makers look to fund those types of work. Even in traditional art, there's now this a lot of exploration of bending traditions and queer performances, or what you would call it, and how to through traditional lenses, how to address those contemporary issues. There's a lot of that in the arts, and so that's the trend here in the Bay. And so groups that don't adhere to that or don't do work along those lines, they kind of have a tough time because that's not popular. And I have to say, in my time as an independent choreographer, that was my struggle then. I wasn't dealing with issues around same-sex marriage or sexual identity things. That just wasn't what I was going to do. I wanted to talk more about real things that most people can relate to, like cultural diversity or race relations, or just how to live your dreams, or just, really, that's where, again, earlier, how to infuse those biblical concepts into your work without going overboard and like having your work be about a biblical story. That's not a bad thing either. But there's so much to talk about. There's so much we can do, and that we can also show that there's a whole range of things. And again, that's why I do like traditional arts, because there's so much there in terms of oral tradition and crafts and stories of life and continuing life and places and sacred spaces. I mean, those are things that are have a large historical content. So those are the things that I enjoy sharing as well. And so that's the trend, at least here in the Bay, where people are going, they're trying to bring in these contemporary topics, and they're trying to infuse them in different genres to really push these ideas. So where does that leave us as Christians? Well, unfortunately, what I'm seeing is we're busy hanging out with other Christians. We're not engaging, we're not challenging ourselves about how to counter that. What works can we do to counter that? It's a risk. And believe me, I've been on that side where if I do a piece, even in a, choreographer showcase, well, I did a piece that talked about just forgiveness. And it's funny how the press will just ignore and won't even mention your piece, even though the work is good. But because there's any hint of God or godliness, they won't talk about it. But however, that's okay, because we only have an audience of one. The message still needs to be shared, even if it's something light like that. So we can't be afraid to be in those places. Our presence alone changes the dynamics. First of all, just being there, we change the atmosphere. So we have to yet understand and be confident in what God has given us, and be willing to go in those places anyway. Of course, we pray about everything. That's where prayer meetings and Bible studies and stuff come in to help equip us to be able to be in these places. But what's happening is that we're becoming less involved. We're becoming less present. We're not in those spaces because we see what's happening and we get afraid. Believe me, I got plenty of stories where I've been in some spots where I never thought I would be, but they keep asking me to show up. They keep asking me to come. And so that's every opportunity to infuse more and more of God's influence. That's what we take, and so even when we're creating works, there's a whole lot we can do with what we have. And again, we don't have every piece doesn't have to be a biblical narrative, but we can take the ideas and the concepts and infuse it into our work. There's, like I said, there's plenty to talk about, but we have to not be afraid. And we might not, and we will, and we might get rejected. That comes with that too. That's part of even just being an artist. But it doesn't mean that you're rejected or that your work, it just means that's not what they like, and it's okay. You keep doing it or find another venue. There's plenty of opportunity. So we have to, as it says, as it infers, to be in the world but not of it. And I think what I'm seeing is that we're busy hiding out and doing our own thing and being where everybody's going to clap for you, where everybody's going to laud you. But when you leave that space, that doesn't mean you're going to get that same attention. And if you don't, can you still hold yourself? So we have work to do on this side over here, because they're going to do what they're going to do over there. But we need to do what we need to do and be consistent and not be afraid. And that's why when we did our open air concerts, that was part of that message was, we have to be open about who we are. We can't be afraid. Now, again, we're not trying to beat people up with who we are, but we're just saying we need to be able to stand in our own convictions, because they're going to do that on their side. They're not going to change. We can't either. And that's where it gets tough, but that's also an opportunity where our faith tool gets sharpened, and so that's what I see on both sides. I think on our side, we yet can grow and yet can change, but on their side, I see things unfortunately becoming, at least here in California, in the Bay Area specific, it's becoming more and more degraded because these ideas are being infused in this arena.
It sticks out to me what you said, just about that idea of making attempt and rejection. Jesus was rejected.
Mm-hmm.
And if we understand what it means to identify with Christ, there's a part of that we embrace, to not necessarily always seek out for that. Okay, I want to be rejected this time. I'm going to be rejected again. I'm going to just do this. I'll just be rejected. But it's really understanding that it's okay, and it's better than okay, because then probably what you've done is been shining a little light in some darkness. And I appreciate also just your thought, because I know you, and I know that in one way it's people they want to marginalize and soften the us and them in that context. It's a we, because then it's more harmonious. And there's times I know you are a we, because you're so inclusive and wanting to build a community that involves others in their areas of giftedness, and it doesn't matter always where they're coming from. It's just your love is extended in such a generous way that is welcoming, and it allows that we-ness. But it's also really important, I believe, as believer artists and believers in general. The Bible is so very clear about here are people who follow me, and here are their beliefs and tendencies and convictions and lifestyles, and here are the people who don't.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
There is that contention and opposition.
Oh yeah,
it does happen. And so I appreciate, because I know you, I appreciate that part of who you are, but I also appreciate that what I see is there tends to be a marginalization in the context where we don't want necessarily to be offensive. We're afraid of offending anybody.
Yeah.
And it gets a bit out of control at times.
Yeah.
You just say one small thing sometimes as a believer, and it'll be received as offense, and that's not the heart.
Yeah.
So we could spend a long time
just on that.
This conversation. Yeah. So thank you. So just as we're closing, I'd love for you to share if there's anything that we didn't touch on, things that just sort of thumping in your heart, or any other nuggets of wisdom that I know you have.
Yeah, just for all the artists who are Christians, to not be afraid to say no, not be afraid to be told no, to not allow people to put you in a box. Yeah, I see that a lot. I see it and I hope I don't get in trouble, but I see it in the praise dance. I see it a lot in that. I see everybody trying to be the same and look the same. Stop it. Stop. What is God saying to you? And do that. God is not calling us to be monoliths in that sense. We're monoliths in the fact that we're one in Christ. That's the only monolith that we're supposed to have or show. But in terms of our uniqueness, we are all uniquely made in the image of God with the unique cluster of gifts. So ask God, talk to God. And this is where how, when you were starting off earlier about cultivating a space of listening, this is where that kicks in. God, what are you saying to me about what you want me to do? And just this morning, that was a word for me today. How am I using the gifts with an S? How am I using that? What am I really doing? I think I'm doing a lot, but you'd be surprised. It's like, no, you're not doing enough. You're not busy. I'm like, really? Okay. But the thing is, hearing God daily and doing that. And it's not to say that we shouldn't heed to people's advice if it's good, but we have to keep in mind and go back to, okay, God, what do you want me to do with that now? Because right now I'm seeing too much of the same thing. And I don't think we're supposed to be like that. I don't think we're supposed to look like that. I think as Christians, we're supposed to be sprinkled in so many different places. There should be something unique about everything that we're doing. But what's the unifying factor is Christ. People need to see the imprint, the thumbprint of God in your life. And again, it's not about you quoting a bunch of scripture. It's really people are looking at the thumbprint of your life. So it's not to say we're to be perfect, but people ought to see God's influence in your own life, so that peppers everything that you do. So that's my big encouragement. The thing I want to share with everybody who is, whether you're in the arts industry or you're not, hear what God is saying for you and do that in Jesus' name.
Well, we'll just leave it right there. Gorgeous. Thank you.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing this.
Yeah, well, I'll make sure that I make connection with you and the viewers, so you can make sure you get those links to me. But I just wanted to say again, thank you, and it's just been a long time, and I'm so appreciative through these years. The conversations. I think 2 weeks ago, I was driving. I think we talked for like 2.5 hours.
Oh, we did.
You're brilliant.
That was great.
Just the deep things that we got into, and
yes, we did.
Awesome that was, and praying, and I mean, it was just so gorgeous. I love you so much, and
I love you, girl. Yeah. I'm so happy I'm so proud of everything that you're doing, and you certainly continue to inspire me, and I know you're inspiring other people. So I definitely look forward to seeing you with my own eyes in person. Yes, so this is a preview.
We will make that happen.
We will make that happen. But thank you all so much. And thank you, everybody, for listening and watching.
Thank you.
All right. God bless you, baby. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bless you. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.